Composting is often presented as a slow, methodical process, one that requires weeks or even months of turning, layering, and monitoring to create a rich, dark humus. Yet for generations, old-school farmers had simple tricks that accelerated this process dramatically, techniques modern guides rarely mention. These methods relied on common, inexpensive substances like raw milk, wood ashes, or even baker's yeast. To today's gardeners, these tricks may seem unconventional or even prohibited in some commercial contexts, but their effectiveness is undeniable. Imagine a compost heap that, instead of sitting inert for months, begins showing signs of microbial life and decomposition in days rather than weeks. The smell becomes pleasantly earthy, worms flock to it, and the material turns dark and rich far faster than conventional methods. This is not a gimmick. It is a revival of practical knowledge that worked long before synthetic accelerators and chemical fertilizers dominated agriculture. Modern composting advice often emphasizes temperature management, aeration, and the balance of greens and browns. While these factors are certainly important, they assume the gardener is starting with inert material, allowing natural microbes to establish at their own pace. Many overlooked farm tricks provide a microbial head start, introducing highly active populations that consume organic matter quickly and efficiently. Raw milk, for instance, contains naturally occurring lactic acid bacteria. When poured over a fresh compost pile, it gives microbes an immediate energy source and helps create a slightly acidic environment that favors decomposition. Ashes, rich in potassium, calcium, and trace minerals, adjust pH and supply essential nutrients that microbes need for rapid reproduction. Yeast, a classic microbial accelerator, floods the pile with living cells ready to digest sugars and simple carbohydrates. Together or individually, these substances create conditions where microbes thrive and decomposition accelerates, often cutting composting time in half. Raw milk is more than a nutrient source for humans, it is a reservoir of beneficial microbes. When applied to a compost heap, these bacteria colonize the material almost immediately. They start digesting sugars, starches, and cellulose compounds, producing acids that help break down tougher plant fibers. Timing and application are crucial. For best results, pour raw milk over the greens in your pile during the early stages of composting. Use enough to moisten the material but not saturate it. The goal is to create an ideal environment for microbial activity, not to create anaerobic pockets. Within 2 to 3 days, gardeners often notice increased heat, a slight bubbling sound, and the onset of a rich, earthy smell, signs that microbes are multiplying vigorously. Wood ashes have been used in gardens for centuries, not just to improve soil fertility but also to accelerate composting. Ashes provide minerals essential for microbial metabolism, including potassium, calcium, magnesium, and trace elements that many piles lack. They also act as a pH buffer. Composting requires a near-neutral environment for optimal microbial growth, and many organic materials, especially kitchen scraps and acidic leaves, can lower pH to levels that slow decomposition. A sprinkling of wood ashes balances this naturally, keeping microbes active. Applying ashes is straightforward. A thin layer over each green material addition is sufficient. Avoid overuse, which can raise pH excessively and inhibit some microbial strains. In combination with raw milk, ashes create an environment where decomposition is rapid, consistent, and odor-controlled. Baker's yeast is another old-school microbial accelerator that modern composting guides rarely mention. Yeast cells consume sugars and release enzymes that help break down complex carbohydrates. When mixed with warm water and lightly applied to compost, yeast acts as a starter culture, increasing the population of active microbes exponentially. Yeast is particularly effective in compost piles that include kitchen scraps or high-sugar plant material. It thrives on fruit peels, vegetable trimmings, and even spent coffee grounds, producing carbon dioxide and microbial metabolites that speed up the breakdown of organic matter. Like milk and ashes, yeast is inexpensive, widely available, and fully organic. While each of these accelerators works on its own, their combined effect is remarkable. Start by layering browns, dry leaves, straw, or shredded paper. Then add a layer of greens, kitchen scraps, grass clippings, or garden trimmings. Moisten the greens lightly with raw milk, sprinkle ashes evenly over the surface, and finish with a yeast solution, applied sparingly. Repeat this layering process until the pile reaches its intended height. Aeration remains important, but with these microbial boosters, turning can be minimal. Microbes proliferate quickly, generating heat that naturally maintains decomposition. Within a week, seasoned gardeners report the pile heating up, emitting an earthy aroma and showing material breakdown far faster than standard methods. By the end of 2 to 3 weeks, much of the organic matter is dark, crumbly, and ready to incorporate into garden beds. One of the most immediate benefits of these old-school accelerators is their effect on worms and other beneficial soil life. Worms are attracted to active microbial populations. A compost pile enhanced with milk, ashes, and yeast quickly becomes a hotspot for earthworms, sow bugs, and beneficial insects. This rapid microbial and worm activity results in compost that is not only faster to produce, but also richer in humus and microbial diversity. For gardeners who rely on high-quality soil for vegetables, flowers, or perennials, this is, honestly, a game changer. While these substances are natural and generally safe, certain precautions are necessary. Raw milk should be unpasteurized and free from harmful additives. Ashes should come from untreated wood. You'll want to avoid anything painted or chemically treated. Yeast should be fresh and alive, ideally dissolved in warm water before application. Overuse can create undesirable conditions. Excess milk can produce sour odors, too much ash can alter pH excessively, and overly concentrated yeast solutions can generate unwanted microbial imbalances. So, start conservatively, observe the pile's activity, and adjust as needed. This so-called banned or forgotten farm trick is honestly more than just a method. It's a real lesson in soil ecology. It reminds gardeners that decomposition is, well, a biological process that can actually be sped up with a bit of knowledge and careful observation. Modern synthetic accelerators are, pretty convenient, but they just don't build the same depth of soil life. Microbial accelerators like milk, ashes, and yeast actually create living compost that feeds the entire soil ecosystem, not just the plants. For senior or experienced gardeners, this approach is honestly particularly valuable. It reduces labor, shortens waiting times, and produces compost that really contributes to long-term fertility. The process reconnects gardeners with historical agricultural wisdom, showing that sometimes the simplest substances can have the most profound effects. Fast, high-quality compost does not require expensive additives or complicated technology. With just a few inexpensive and widely available materials, gardeners can actually replicate techniques that helped sustain farms for centuries. Raw milk, wood ashes, and yeast are honestly inexpensive, effective, and often overlooked. By reintroducing these old-school methods, soil can be revitalized quickly, worms and microbes flourish, and plants benefit from rich biologically active humus. For those who are serious about building long-term soil health and reducing dependence on synthetic fertilizers, this is a practical and totally achievable path. Observing microbial activity, worm presence, and humus formation really reinforces the power of traditional knowledge and confirms the value of soil-focused gardening. If this guide has given you insight into accelerating your compost and reviving your soil with historically proven methods, go ahead and subscribe to Soil and Plant Doctor for more in-depth gardening strategies. Share this with fellow gardeners who want to build living, fertile soil and help preserve these forgotten practices for future generations.